My name is Heather Hartwell, 32 years old. The rain that had stalked us from the cemetery trailed me up the circular drive of Willowbrook Country Club, needling the windshield like it wanted in. I let the wipers drag one more time, then killed the engine and sat with paint-stained fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, cerulean under my nails, from this morning's art class with third graders who still believed their cards could fix the world. Inside, a string quartet murmured behind doors that leaked warm light and cold judgment. I smoothed the black dress I could barely afford and told myself I could do this. Show up, breathe, survive. The marble foyer carried every sound like gossip, the clink of glass, a cough, my heels betraying my nerves. People I'd known my whole life drifted toward the memorial display, faces arranged into sympathy. I found my sister by the sheer gravitational pull of her confidence. Victoria stood immaculate in a tailored black suit that understood her angles, diamond ring biting the light. She was already holding court, a small audience drinking up her poised anecdotes about our parents' legacy. "There she is," Victoria said, pitching her voice so it traveled. "My sister, the artist." She made the last word sound like a temporary illness. My fiancé, Ryan, materialized at my elbow, trim in a navy suit that said promotion ready. His hand touched mine, but didn't hold. "You okay?" he whispered, without quite looking at me. Before I formed a lie, the memorial reel began. Scenes of our parents' life unspooled. Charity galas, ribbon cuttings, Victoria at Harvard Law, beaming at the dean, Victoria at her firm's opening, Victoria shaking hands with men who controlled cities. The piano soared. Then, almost as an afterthought, a single photo of me at high school graduation flashed and vanished. "Beautiful tribute," someone murmured. My throat tightened. Ryan's fingers slipped away. "Work call," he mouthed, already walking. Mr. Whitmore, the family attorney whose voice had narrated our childhood contracts, appeared like a ghost that had lost his composure. His tie was crooked, his hands fussed with the latch on an overstuffed briefcase. "I'm sorry, girls," he said, eyes skittering. "Your parents were adamant, reading immediately after the reception." Victoria's smile was diplomatic irritation. Now? But she was already gliding toward the library. Leather, dark wood, and the faint scent of cigar smoke made the room feel centuries older than us. We took opposite sides of the mahogany table like opposing counsel. Ryan slipped back into the seat beside me, but angled toward the door, body already halfway into a different life. "Before I begin," Whitmore managed, "your parents loved you very much. They deliberated." His voice made deliberate sound like a wound. Papers rustled. "To my daughter, Victoria Margaret Hartwell," he read, "I leave the residence at North Lakeshore Drive, valued at approximately $3.2 million, the investment portfolio of roughly $5 million, the jewelry collection, and Harold's vintage automobiles." I listened to words I'd always known were coming, trudge across the room and kneel at her feet. Victoria's chin lifted a millimeter in what, for her, passed as emotion. "And to my daughter, Heather Rose Hartwell." The pause lasted a lifetime. "The family farmhouse in Millfield, Illinois, and $300 in cash." Silence. Even the air held its breath. Then Victoria's laugh, quick, corrected into a cough. "Is that all?" Whitmore's eyes wouldn't meet mine. "That is the complete distribution as specified." Ryan stood so fast his chair scraped. "Heather, can we talk?" His tone had changed. The warmth had been set outside with the umbrellas. We didn't make it to the parking lot before the downpour swallowed us. He stopped beside his car, water stippling his perfect haircut. "I can't do this," he said, voice calm, the way doctors give bad news. "I thought your family's situation would offer stability, a foundation for us. But today..." He gestured toward the building, toward the world that had just confirmed what it thought of me. "Your parents saw something I've been ignoring. I'm ambitious, Heather. I won't apologize for that." "You're saying you won't marry me," I said, because saying failure out loud felt like handing him a weapon. "I'm saying I need a partner moving in the same direction." He slipped the ring from my finger without ceremony. "Victoria's firm offered me a senior associate role. I start Monday." A car door thunked shut behind us. "Men can be impulsive," Victoria called over the rain, arriving with perfect timing and not a drop on her. "I'm sorry, Heather." The sympathy in her voice was lacquered. She pressed a card into my palm. Marcus Stone, a developer. The farmhouse land is worthless sentiment, but he's generous. 50, maybe 60,000. Enough to start over. Practical choices, baby sister. The farmhouse was Grandma Eleanor's, I said, surprising myself with how steady it sounded. Exactly, she replied, steel under satin. You don't want to become her. She floated away on expensive heels. Ryan drove off without looking back. I stood alone, rain needling my scalp, the ring indent still warm on my finger. The drive to Millfield took 3 hours of billboard reminders that my sister's face sold justice like perfume. Hartwell and Associates. We deliver. The fields blurred into slate under the weather. I almost turned around twice, then kept going because forward was the only direction left. The farmhouse hunched at the end of a rutted lane like it was bracing for another hit. East roof sagging. Windows blind with grime or plywood. Vines strangling the porch. Someone had spray painted "Haunted" on the barn in a red that the failing light made look freshly violent. I sat in the car until the heater ran out of courage, then found the old spare key under a flower pot that had forgotten flowers. Inside, rot introduced itself. The ceiling had peeled back to expose ribs of wood, and the air tasted like a damp cellar and old grief. Sheet-draped furniture disintegrated at my touch. Something small fled under a cabinet. The kitchen was worse. Cabinets yawning on their hinges, linoleum curling like burnt paper, an ancient refrigerator sulking against the wall. I ran the tap. Brown water coughed, then cleared. It felt like a metaphor that refused to be subtle. I tried to make tea on a dead stove, then laughed, because of course. My hands shook. I opened a cabinet and found plates with my grandmother's initials. Delicate script at war with chipped porcelain. The first plate shattered beautifully against the wall, a clean white bloom of violence. The second followed. By the third, I was sobbing about fairness and daughters and the terrible arithmetic of love that had always favored Victoria's sum. When there were no plates left to break, I slid to the floor, mouth tasting of salt and plaster, the roof dripping one cold drop at a time onto my cheek like the world was counting. That's when I noticed the scratches. At first, they registered as damage, the random scarring of years. But when I wiped away grime with my sleeve, a pattern revealed itself. Short, deliberate gouges pulling toward the refrigerator. Arrows, subtle and stubborn. I stared, heartbeat slowing into a different kind of attention. Don't be ridiculous, I told the empty room, because that's what Victoria would have said. But my grandmother's name, Eleanor, had started knocking in my skull in a rhythm that felt like insistence. I braced my hands against the fridge and pulled. Rust protested. Metal shrieked across wood with a sound that flayed nerves. Beneath, sunk into the floorboards, was a brass ring dulled by decades. I crouched, breath fogging, fingertips tracing the cold arc of the handle. The outline of a square hatch bled into view, its seams sealed with something that had kept it safe while the rest of the house surrendered. I curled my fingers through the ring and tugged. Nothing. I set my feet, pulled harder, and a hidden latch yielded with a click that sounded, to me, like a promise being kept. The door opened onto darkness that felt careful. Not the damp, collapsing dark of the rest of the house. This air was cooler, clean, like a breath held for years. Stairs fell away in a tight rectangle. Every horror movie I'd ever half-watched whispered no. But grief had already hollowed me out, and curiosity rushed to fill the space. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Victoria, have you called Marcus? Demolition schedule is tight. Don't make this harder than it needs. A ... Then, be practical, Heather. I set the phone face down on the dead counter and looked at the black square yawning at my feet. Rain drummed the roof, steady as a heart. Somewhere inside me, a filament of heat glowed. The smallest filament, the kind a single match makes in a winter room. And I understood that if I went down those stairs, my life would not return to its previous shape. I picked up my phone for a flashlight, found the first step with my toe, and began to descend, counting each tread like a vow. The wood beneath my feet surprised me. No creak, no rot, just solid planks descending into air that carried no mold, no mildew, nothing of the farmhouse's ruin. My phone's flashlight cut a narrow path through the dark. The beam caught walls, but not the crumbling stone I'd expected. Smooth concrete, modern, wrong. At the bottom, my shoes landed on cool floor instead of dirt. My pulse skipped when my fingers found a switch on the wall. I hesitated, hearing my grandmother's name drum inside my skull, then flicked it. The room obeyed with a low hum, fluorescents flickering alive one by one, and suddenly I was standing in a vault. Rows of white walls. Climate control humming in quiet authority. Metal racks holding canvases. Dozens, maybe hundreds, each wrapped, labeled, stored like treasure. I staggered forward. My phone trembled in my hand, though the flashlight was no longer needed. My fingers found the nearest slot, pulled, and revealed a prairie landscape so vivid I swore I heard wind stirring through painted grass. The signature, Eleanor Hartwell, 1962. I pulled another, a portrait of a girl with green eyes like mine. My stubborn chin, dated 1958. My throat locked. One canvas after another, not reproductions, originals, perfectly preserved. My grandmother's work, thought destroyed in a studio fire before I was born. This isn't real, I whispered, but the paint under my fingertips was too textured, too alive. I fumbled my phone back into my palm, breath ragged, and typed her name into the search bar. Eleanor Hartwell, artist. The results hit like a punch. Eleanor Hartwell, 1925 to 1978, regarded as one of the most important American artists of the mid-20th century. Career cut short after a fire destroyed her studio in 1977. Considered a tragic loss to American art history. Survived by a husband who had her committed for psychiatric treatment shortly before her death. Photos of her paintings I'd never seen filled the screen. Auction results. A sketch sold last year for $2.8 million. A prairie storm canvas, eerily like the one leaning beside me, had fetched $8.7 million. My knees gave. I sat hard on the cold floor. Around me the air felt charged, like electricity before lightning. My phone buzzed in my lap. Victoria again. Have you called Marcus yet? He's eager. Don't waste time. Demolition needs to happen fast. Demolition. She wanted this gone. Buried. Erased. I looked up at the vault of hidden genius, of silenced history, and hysteria bubbled out of me in a laugh that didn't sound like mine. That's when the knock came. Upstairs. Sharp. 3 raps that reverberated through the house. I froze, eyes dragging to the narrow stairs I'd descended. Who would come here? No one even knew I was in Millfield. I shoved the painting back into its rack, flipped the switch, and darkness swallowed the room again. I climbed, forcing the hatch shut, shoving the refrigerator back across the scratches until it screamed into place. My chest heaved. Another knock, slower this time, like the visitor had all the time in the world. I wiped my palms on my dress and went to the door. An elderly man stood on the porch, rain dripping off his hat brim, a casserole dish steaming in his hands. His face was weathered leather, eyes clear as if they'd watched storms pass without blinking. You must be Heather, he said, voice warm gravel. I'm Walter Garrison, from the next farm over. He lifted the dish slightly. Thought you might be hungry. My fingers closed around the doorframe, grounding myself. That's very kind. He smiled faintly. Your mother used to visit, once a month, regular as clockwork, always alone, always carrying art supplies down with her, but never bringing them back up. The words pierced through me. My mother, coming here, month after month, carrying supplies into the silence. Good woman, Walter added softly. Quiet, but good. She'd want you to know that. I managed to thank you, took the dish, and shut the door with my back pressed against it, casserole trembling in my hands. My mother had known. She had been here. She'd kept the secret. The refrigerator loomed across the ruined kitchen, its scratched floor whispering that secrets don't stay buried forever. I set the casserole down untouched. My hands moved almost without me, dragging the refrigerator again, opening the hatch, and taking those steps 2 at a time. This time I noticed something else, a door painted to match the white wall at the far end of the vault. I approached with my pulse pounding so loudly it drowned the hum of the climate system. My hand shook as it found the handle. The door opened onto a second room. Not a vault, a studio. Easels, brushes, paint tubes neatly capped. Stacks of canvases, hundreds. All signed not Eleanor, but Margaret Hartwell, my mother. Every painting was of me. Me as a child chasing fireflies. Me asleep on the sofa. Me crying in my room. Me laughing with a paintbrush clenched like a sword. Years of my life rendered in oil and light. All the moments she had never spoken aloud but had trapped here in secret. And not a single painting of Victoria. On the main easel sat an envelope, my name written across it in my mother's careful script. I couldn't breathe as I opened it. My darling Heather, the letter began, if you're reading this, you found what Victoria must never have. She got what she values, money and status. You get what you will treasure, truth and legacy. Her words blurred as my eyes filled. Your grandmother Eleanor wasn't crazy. She was betrayed. Her paintings were never destroyed. They were stolen, hidden. Your father and Victoria have been selling them for years. Offshore accounts, forged losses. I tried to stop them, but threats came. I knew they would silence me. That is why I made sure the farmhouse passed to you. The will is ironclad. Mr. Whitmore helped me write it that way. Don't trust anyone, not even him. The $300 is symbolic, what Eleanor paid for this house in 1950. Our family's true legacy began here. Now it's yours to protect. Be careful, my love. Victoria will come for it if she knows. You are the artist. You are the truth keeper. All my love, Mom. The paper shook in my grip. My chest felt carved open, every breath edged with disbelief and grief. Murdered, that's what she meant. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the sound grotesque in the silent studio. A new text from Victoria. Marcus can meet you at 9 tomorrow. Don't drag this out, Heather. It's just a house. Be smart for once in your life. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then at the canvases surrounding me. My mother's love letters, painted in secret, hidden in fear. Thunder rattled the windows above. Somewhere outside, the night pressed close. And I realized this wasn't just inheritance, this was evidence. And evidence was something people killed for. The storm hadn't let up by morning. The farmhouse windows rattled in their frames, raindrops streaking down glass like tears. I barely slept, my mind trapped between my mother's letter and the vault that pulsed like a living secret beneath the floorboards. Coffee tasted like ashes, but I drank it anyway, sitting at the kitchen table with the casserole Walter had brought untouched between us. The smell of cheese and onions mingled with mold and dust, absurd in its domesticity against the weight of revelation. I should have called someone, friends, police, anyone. But my mother's warning echoed louder than the thunder. Don't trust anyone, not even him. Instead, I returned to the basement. The hatch creaked, refrigerator scraping across the gouged wood. My flashlight caught the racks, the quiet hum of climate control. The air down there was still cool, still steady, as though time itself had been forced to hold its breath. I walked the rows slowly, reverently, sliding out canvases one at a time. Prairie fields stretching endless under bruised skies. A river frozen mid-current, light fractured across ice. Faces, strangers, but alive in paint, captured with a tenderness that could undo you. Each bore her name, Eleanor Hartwell. The internet hadn't lied. She was a ghost legend, a tragedy footnoted in art history books. But here she wasn't lost. She was waiting. I sank onto the floor, canvases spread around me like a cathedral of color. My phone trembled in my hands as I snapped photos. 3 paintings, then 4. I sent them to the only person I thought might understand, Dr. Sarah Mills, my old art history professor. No words, just images. I didn't expect her to answer at 2 a.m., but her reply came within minutes. Call me immediately. Do not tell anyone else about these. I'm driving down tonight. My stomach flipped. The warning in her message matched the one in my mother's letter. I sat back, staring at the works. Each brushstroke hummed with grief, defiance, truth. These weren't just paintings. They were evidence of betrayal, maybe even of murder. I found myself whispering aloud, "Why did you hide them, Grandma? Why did you let them think you were crazy?" The fluorescent light buzzed softly. Of course, there was no answer. Only paint. Only silence. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. I froze. The farmhouse had been abandoned for decades, its isolation both curse and shield. My car was the only one in the driveway, unless... I climbed the stairs carefully, the letter crinkling in my pocket, ready to slam the hatch closed if I had to. The kitchen stood empty. Rain slashed the windows, shadows shifting across the peeling linoleum. Another creak, this time from the porch. I gripped a chipped plate shard like a weapon and moved toward the sound. It wasn't Victoria, not yet. When I cracked the door open, the same elderly man from last night stood there, rain hat dripping, cane tapping against the wood. Walter Garrison again. Didn't mean to scare you, he said, eyes narrowing. Saw the light on. Thought you might need company. I lowered the plate slowly. You were here last night. Storm like this, roads get lonely. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Your mother used to come in storms too. Funny habit. He didn't elaborate, just tipped his hat and shuffled back across the mud to a pickup that looked older than me. I watched his taillights vanish into rain. Alone again, but less certain of it, I closed the door and leaned my forehead against the peeling paint. My pulse thundered. By the time Dr. Mills arrived, it was close to 2 a.m. Her headlights carved through the storm, sweeping across the ruined porch. She emerged from her car disheveled, hair plastered, eyes alight with the kind of hunger I'd only seen when she lectured about lost art. Heather, she breathed, gripping my hands hard enough to hurt. Show me. I led her down the stairs into the vault, flipping the switch. Her gasp cracked the silence. Oh my God. She staggered toward the racks like a pilgrim reaching holy ground. Her hands trembled as she touched the canvases. Do you understand what this is? Eleanor Hartwell's lost collection. Museums have been searching for these for 40 years. Prairie Storm alone could be worth $10 million. And here, she pulled one canvas free, light catching her glasses. This is history. I nodded, throat too tight for words. She turned on me suddenly, eyes sharp. Does Victoria know? No. The lie came too quickly. At least, not yet. Good, keep it that way. Her gaze flicked toward the far wall where the studio door blended into paint. And that? I hesitated, then opened it. When she saw the room filled with my mother's paintings, hundreds of canvases of me, my life rendered in secret detail, her expression softened. She loved you, Sarah whispered. She must have known this was the only way she could speak. I touched the envelope still folded in my pocket. She also knew what they'd done. To Eleanor, to her, to me. We stood surrounded by portraits of a daughter cherished in secret, the storm outside rattling shutters like it wanted in. Sarah finally pulled her phone from her bag. I have to call someone, a collector I trust. James Rothschild. He's been searching for Eleanor's work his entire life. He'll know how to protect you. Her fingers hovered over the dial, then froze. Footsteps, heavy, on the porch. I grabbed her wrist. No one should be here this late. 3 deliberate knocks. We looked at each other, the vault lights humming. Heather, Sarah whispered, don't open that door. The knocking grew louder, deliberate, each thud reverberating through the rotted beams. Sarah and I stared at each other, breath locked in our throats. Finally, I crept upstairs, each step groaning like it might betray me. My hand hovered above the doorknob, sweat slicking my palm. Who is it? I called, voice breaking more than I wanted. No answer, just silence. Then the soft rasp of someone dragging a finger across the door's surface. I swallowed hard, gathering every ounce of false bravery I could muster, and yanked it open. Rain lashed across the porch, but no one stood there. Only a folded envelope lay on the welcome mat, weighted by a small stone. I bent to pick it up. The envelope was damp but sealed. On the front, in careful ink, was written, Heather. My skin prickled. Sarah appeared at my shoulder, peering down. Do you recognize the handwriting? I shook my head. It wasn't my mother's, too crisp, too steady. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words. Marcus Stone will come tomorrow. Sarah exhaled sharply. So they know you're here. I closed the door and locked it, as if the flimsy bolt could keep wolves out. My stomach twisted. Victoria was moving faster than I'd expected. We retreated to the kitchen, tension wrapped tight around us. The casserole Walter had brought still sat cold and untouched on the counter, its foil catching the light. The farmhouse felt less like a shelter and more like a stage set, waiting for actors to arrive. Marcus Stone is a developer, Sarah said, pacing. He has a reputation, aggressive deals, properties flipped for political gain. He doesn't just knock politely, he comes with leverage. I rubbed my temples. Victoria gave me his card. She said the land was worth maybe $60,000. Sarah laughed bitterly. Try $60 million with what's underneath. And if Marcus is involved, she already knows that. I sank into a chair, my mother's letter burning in my pocket. What am I supposed to do? Survive long enough to make choices. Sarah sat across from me, leaning forward. That means we need allies. I'll call James Rothschild. He's discreet, and he has the kind of money and influence that scares people like Marcus. I nodded, though part of me recoiled. Every time I trusted someone with this secret, I felt like I was placing a knife in their hands and turning my back. The storm rattled windows through the night, but exhaustion finally pulled me under. My dreams were fractured, my mother painting in silence, Eleanor screaming behind asylum doors, Victoria laughing as she signed away my name. At dawn, sunlight fractured the storm, weak and watery, spilling across the ruined kitchen. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Heather? A man's voice, warm but cautious. My name is James Rothschild. Dr. Mills sent me photos last night. I sat up straighter. You believe they're real? He gave a soft, reverent laugh. I don't believe, Heather. I know. I studied under Eleanor before the fire. I've been chasing whispers of her lost work for decades. I thought they were gone forever. I'll be there by evening. Don't sell. Don't sign anything. Before I could respond, another knock rattled the door, louder, more confident. Sarah stiffened, her phone clutched white-knuckled. I crossed the ruined living room, every nerve screaming, and pulled the door open. Marcus Stone filled the doorway. He was everything Victoria adored in a man. Silver hair cut sharp, suit tailored to intimidate, shoes that had never touched mud. He stepped inside without waiting, nose wrinkling at the mold. Miss Hartwell, he said, voice smooth as glass, your sister said you'd be ready to sign today. I haven't decided anything. His smile didn't touch his eyes. Then let me be clear. Victoria already signed preliminary documents as the family representative. The development is happening. You can either take the $60,000 and walk away, or we can do this the hard way. She has no authority to sign for this property, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus slid a folded paper from his leather briefcase, dropping it onto the table like a card in a high-stakes game. Power of attorney. Signed by your father 6 months ago, granting Victoria full control of all family holdings. My stomach dropped. That's not possible, I whispered. The will. The will governs after death, he interrupted smoothly. This governs business during life. Any agreements she made before your parents passed remain binding. Sarah stepped forward, fire in her eyes. Except this house was specifically excluded. It was deeded to Heather, independently, with all contents included. Mr. Whitmore drafted it himself. Marcus's jaw tightened. We'll see what a judge thinks. He let the words hang, then leaned closer to me. His cologne smelled expensive, suffocating. 60,000 is generous. Take it. Don't make me come back with lawyers. When he left, the farmhouse seemed to exhale. My knees buckled, but Sarah steadied me. They're cornering you, she said. But this isn't over. James will help us. We just need to hold out. I wanted to believe her. But as I looked at the casserole cooling on the counter, the envelope on the table, and the hatch hidden under the refrigerator, I felt like prey being given a head start. The phone buzzed again. This time, a name I knew. Ryan. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played anyway. His voice, soft, contrite. Heather, I'm sorry. I want to see you, please. Just let me explain. I was wrong. Sarah met my eyes, suspicion flickering. Because in the silence after his words, I realized what my mother had warned me was already happening. They weren't just after the house. They were after me. Ryan's voice still echoed in my ears long after the voicemail ended. Please, just let me explain. I was wrong. If I'd heard it a week ago, I might have believed him. Now it felt like a trap dressed in apologies. Sarah grabbed her bag. Don't answer him. Not now. Not ever. He's already chosen his side. I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew she was right. Ryan wasn't calling out of love. He was calling because Victoria had wound the leash tighter. By evening, another set of headlights cut through the drizzle. This time, the vehicle wasn't sleek like Marcus's car, but a modest sedan. A man in his 60s climbed out, tweed jacket dampened by rain, glasses fogged. He looked more like a professor than a power broker. James Rothschild. The moment he stepped into the basement vault, he removed his glasses and pressed a trembling hand to his mouth. Tears shone in his eyes as he touched the edge of a prairie painting. 40 years, he whispered. I've been waiting 40 years to see these again. He turned to me, gaze sharp despite the tears. Do you realize what you've inherited, Heather? This isn't just art. This is a revolution resurrected. Eleanor's work changed how we saw ourselves until they buried her. And your mother, she saved it, protected it. She must have known the storm coming for her. His words filled the air like scripture. For the first time, I felt the weight of inheritance not as humiliation, but as power. But James's awe soon darkened into caution. Your sister won't stop. Neither will Marcus. And Senator Blackwood. He shook his head. This isn't just about money. It's about reputation, legacy, power. If these paintings go public, secrets come with them, dangerous ones. Senator Blackwood? I asked. Sarah nodded grimly. Victoria's fiancé's father. He sits on the National Gallery's board. They've been trying to acquire Eleanor's pieces for years. If Victoria controls the discovery, it legitimizes her, elevates her. But if you keep it, she has everything to lose, I finished. The three of us sat in silence, the storm outside muttering like an impatient witness. Then came another knock. This one sharper, angrier. Sarah stiffened. That's him. Marcus Stone didn't wait for permission. He strode inside, rain beating on his Italian suit, disdain etched into every line of his face. You've wasted my time, Miss Hartwell, he said coldly. Your sister was clear. This property is to be transferred. I won't play games. He glanced around the kitchen, his eyes lingering too long on the refrigerator. I stepped between him and the hatch. You have no authority here. Marcus's smile was wolfish. Don't be naive. The law bends for people like me. And for people like your sister. If you fight us, you'll be declared incompetent. Mental instability runs in your family, doesn't it? Judges remember these things. The words landed like blows. He wasn't bluffing. He was spelling out the strategy. Victoria had already begun weaving her net. Sarah's voice cut through, sharp as glass. Leave. Now. If you trespass again, I'll make sure every word you just said finds its way into a courtroom. For a moment, Marcus's mask slipped. His eyes hardened, dead and merciless. Then he chuckled, straightened his cufflinks, and walked out as casually as if he'd been visiting an old friend. The slam of the door echoed long after his footsteps vanished. James set his glasses back on, jaw clenched. He's not finished. He'll be back, with paperwork, with sheriffs, with whatever muscle Victoria buys him. You need protection, Heather, more than just us. Sarah touched my arm. There's someone I trust, a private investigator, Thomas Mitchell, ex-FBI, specializes in art crime. If anyone can keep us ahead of them, it's him. I nodded slowly, though fear knotted my stomach tighter. But when my phone buzzed again, dread curdled into something darker. Another voicemail from Ryan. This time, his tone was urgent, frantic. Heather, please pick up. Victoria said things I don't understand. She's not just after the house. She said you have something she needs. If you don't give it to her, she'll... The message cut off. James and Sarah exchanged a glance. She'll what? I whispered. No one answered, because we all already knew. The voicemail ended with static, a sound that rattled in my chest long after I put the phone down. She'll... What? What could Victoria possibly do that she hadn't already begun? Sarah paced the ruined kitchen, her heels clicking over the warped linoleum. She's escalating, Heather. This isn't just intimidation anymore. That cut-off message, that was deliberate. She wanted you to hear just enough. James adjusted his glasses, gaze heavy on me. Your sister is tightening the circle. First the lawyer, then the developer, now Ryan. She's sending every pawn she has to force your hand. I stared at the refrigerator. The scratches on the floor seemed deeper now, more insistent. Secrets don't stay quiet forever. That's when headlights swept across the broken shutters. A car slowed outside. For one sharp, panicked breath, I thought it was Marcus returning with deputies. But when the door opened, the man who stepped in carried no briefcase, no polished arrogance. He was tall, grizzled, a trench coat damp with rain. His eyes scanned the kitchen like he was filing evidence into invisible folders. Heather Hartwell? His voice was gravel wrapped in smoke. Yes, I said carefully. Name's Thomas Mitchell. He flashed a badge that wasn't police but carried the weight of someone who had been. Sarah called. Said you've got a problem that smells like rot and money. Sarah exhaled in relief. Thomas, thank God. He dropped into a chair like he owned it, pulling a battered tablet from his coat. Been in this game 30 years. Whenever art and family collide, bodies aren't far behind. Let's see what we're working with. We led him to the basement. He moved through the vault slowly, reverently, but without awe. He wasn't dazzled like James. He was measuring risk, calculating greed. Damn, he muttered, running a hand over one canvas without touching it. These aren't just valuable. They're blood magnets. Whoever's been sitting on this secret has been fighting wars in the shadows. He turned to me, his eyes sharp. Tell me about your parents' accident. The word accident tasted sour. Car crash, winter roads. That's what everyone said. Thomas's fingers flew across his tablet. Maintenance logs show their Mercedes was serviced 2 weeks before the crash. Perfect condition. But the police report mentions brake failure. My blood chilled. What are you saying? I'm saying somebody wanted them dead. He flipped the tablet around. Photos filled the screen. Insurance policies, signed changes. Your father altered the policy 3 weeks before the crash. Made Victoria sole beneficiary. Convenient, huh? The room seemed to tilt. My mother's letter burned in my pocket. They will silence me. James swore under his breath. Sarah clutched the back of a chair like she needed it to stand. Thomas leaned forward. I've seen this before. A family empire rotting from the inside. Money laundering, stolen art, inheritance games. Your sister has motive, means, and opportunity. And your parents' deaths? He tapped the tablet. Not chance. Execution. I pressed my hands to my temples. But why leave me the farmhouse? James answered softly. Because your mother knew it was the only place Victoria wouldn't value. She hid everything in plain sight. The house groaned around us, thunder rolling outside like agreement. When we returned upstairs, Sarah's phone buzzed. She read the message, her face draining. It's from Whitmore, the lawyer. He wants to meet you, alone, in an hour. Says it's urgent. Alone? I asked. Thomas's jaw tightened. That stinks of setup, but if he's cracking under pressure, he might spill something before they shut him up. Just don't trust him. Record everything. I swallowed hard. The farmhouse suddenly felt like a chessboard, every piece already moving. But the image of my parents' car twisting off the icy road wouldn't leave me. My mother's voice whispering through the letter. They will silence me. Maybe they already had. I nodded. I'll meet him. Thomas handed me a small recorder, pressing it into my palm like a weapon. And if he's lying, Heather, don't blink. Predators smell fear. The farmhouse walls seemed to close in as I pocketed the device. Outside, the rain eased, but the silence it left behind was worse. Because silence meant the next move belonged to Victoria. And she was already 2 steps ahead. The Millfield Diner sat on the edge of town, its neon sign buzzing like a dying insect. The kind of place where truckers nursed coffee through the night and locals pretended secrets couldn't find them. I parked in the back, fingers tight on the steering wheel, replaying Thomas's warning in my head. Predators smell fear. Inside, the air smelled of grease and burnt toast. Mr. Whitmore sat alone in a corner booth, his suit wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. He looked nothing like the unshakable attorney who had served my family for 40 years. When his eyes found mine, guilt washed over his features. You came, he whispered, as though surprised. I slid into the booth opposite him. You said it was urgent. His hands shook as he pushed a flash drive across the table, his voice low and broken. Your mother gave me this 2 weeks before she died. She wanted me to protect you, Heather. She said if anything happened, I had to give it to you. My pulse hammered. I picked it up, the plastic warm from his palm. What's on it? He leaned closer, eyes darting around the diner. Proof. Records of offshore accounts, financial transfers, conversations I never should have heard. She knew your father and Victoria were planning something. She wanted to change the will, leave everything to you. But the threats... He swallowed hard. She was terrified. Threats from who? I pressed. His eyes closed briefly, like the word itself hurt. From your father. From Victoria. They said she was unstable, that no one would believe her, and if she pushed too hard... He shook his head. Accidents happen. The phrase stabbed through me, the exact words from my mother's letter. I plugged the flash drive into my phone with trembling fingers. Audio files appeared. My thumb hovered, then tapped. My father's voice spilled into the booth, cold and deliberate. Margaret's becoming a problem. She found the accounts. She's asking questions. Victoria's voice answered, crisp, controlled. Then deal with her the way we dealt with Eleanor. Doctors can be bought, a diagnosis here, a prescription there. If she won't sign voluntarily, we make her signature unnecessary. Accidents happen, Dad. Car accidents. Rural roads are unpredictable in winter. The blood drained from my face. I stared at Whitmore. This was a week before the crash. He nodded, shame etched into every line of him. I've carried this for months, Heather. I told myself there wasn't enough proof, that no one would believe me against your sister's power, but your mother, she trusted me, and I failed her. My chest tightened, grief and fury warring in my veins. They killed her. They killed both of them. Whitmore's eyes filled with tears. And if they know you have this, they'll come for you too. A waitress refilled our coffees, oblivious to the earthquake shattering my world. I pocketed the flash drive, my hand shaking. When I returned to the farmhouse, Thomas, Sarah, and James were waiting. Their faces sharpened when they saw me. "Well?" Thomas asked. I set the flash drive on the table. "It's all here. Proof they planned it. Proof Victoria and my father murdered my mother, and my father with her." We gathered around the laptop, the recordings filling the ruined kitchen. Each word was a dagger, each pause another scar. By the time the last file ended, no one spoke. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. "This isn't just inheritance fraud, this is homicide, premeditated." James rubbed his temples. "If this gets out, the scandal will consume half the city. The senator, Victoria, her firm, everything." Sarah's eyes met mine, fierce, which is exactly why they'll do anything to bury it. I sank into a chair, pressing my fists against my temples. And what about the paintings? My mother's studio? She knew. She must have known she didn't have long, and she left everything for me to find. Why me? Why not just give it to the authorities? James's voice softened. Because she knew the authorities wouldn't protect you. She knew the truth would rot in evidence lockers while your sister grew stronger. She trusted you to carry it out. His words settled heavy in my chest. My mother hadn't just left me her love. She had left me her war. Sarah pulled out a binder she'd been assembling. "We need to authenticate the paintings quickly, establish clear ownership. That way, even if Victoria tries to claim power of attorney, she can't touch them." But Thomas shook his head. "Slow down, we're missing something." He tapped a manifest my mother had cataloged. "Look, 51 paintings down there, but 5 years ago, Margaret documented 63. 12 are missing." The air thickened. James's voice cracked. 12 paintings could be worth 100 million, if they're gone." Sarah finished for him, her voice grim. "Then someone's already been selling them, which means Victoria's theft started long before this." I gripped the edge of the table. The farmhouse walls seemed to close in, suffocating me with secrets. "She's been selling them behind our backs, while pretending they burned in the fire." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "If that's true, then Victoria's not just greedy, she's laundering money, maybe even using the senator's gallery connections." My phone buzzed, the vibration sharp as a blade. Victoria's name lit the screen. I hesitated, then answered, switching it to speaker. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Heather, I've been patient, but you have 24 hours to sign those papers, or I'll file to have you declared mentally incompetent. I've got documentation of your breakdowns, your therapy sessions, your inability to keep a stable career. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I swallowed hard. "Go ahead, try it." The line went quiet, then her voice sharpened. "What did you find?" I forced my tone into casual dismissal. "Some mold, old dishes. Why? Did you lose something?" A long silence stretched before she spoke again. 24 hours, Heather. Don't test me." She hung up. Sarah's eyes burned with worry. "She means it. She'll destroy you." I looked at the team gathered in my kitchen. An art professor, a collector, a private investigator, and a guilty lawyer. My unlikely army. "Then we'd better be ready," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Because this time, I wasn't just fighting for inheritance. I was fighting for survival. The night pressed against the farmhouse like a living thing, each gust of wind testing the strength of the rotting beams. We gathered around the kitchen table, the flash drive lying between us like contraband. The air smelled of mildew and fear. Thomas leaned forward, cigarette unlit but dangling from his lips, his voice low. "I've seen enough cases to know your sister's next move. She'll use the system against you. That power of attorney, the threats about your mental state, she's laying groundwork. If she can't buy you out, she'll discredit you, have you locked away, conveniently out of the way while she and Marcus liquidate the estate." Sarah folded her arms. "And Senator Blackwood will back her. He's been laundering money through his gallery for years. Eleanor's missing paintings would be the perfect cover. Inflate their value, pass them off as private acquisitions, funnel dirty money into clean channels." James's face was ashen. "That explains the 12 missing pieces. They weren't stolen for profit alone. They were used as currency." I swallowed hard, staring at the scratches on the kitchen floor, now partly hidden by the refrigerator again. "So what do we do? Go to the FBI?" Thomas shook his head. "Not yet. With the senator involved, you need airtight evidence. Otherwise, they'll bury the case, and you with it." As if on cue, headlights sliced through the curtains. A black town car rolled up the dirt road. My heart stuttered. A man stepped out, Tall, broad, trench coat, swaying. He moved with the confidence of someone who thought he owned whatever ground he stood on. When he knocked, it wasn't a request. It was a declaration. I opened the door an inch. Yes? Detective Morrison, Chicago PD, he said, flashing a badge. Wellness check. Your family is concerned about your mental state. My blood ran cold. Before I could respond, Sarah stepped into view, her posture sharp as glass. Detective, you're 3 hours outside your jurisdiction. Off duty, too, by the look of it. Tell me, does your captain know you're here doing favors for Victoria Hartwell? His jaw tightened. This is a family matter. I'd advise you not to interfere. But another voice cut in, steady, commanding. Unless you want internal affairs crawling through your finances, Detective, I suggest you leave. Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI badge raised, stepped out from behind Thomas. She'd arrived silently, her car parked discreetly at the edge of the drive. Her eyes were hawk-sharp, her tone calm but lethal. Morrison's face reddened. This isn't your jurisdiction either. Walsh smirked. Corruption is always my jurisdiction, especially when it ties to federal investigations. New boat, isn't it? Nice upgrade for a detective's salary. He faltered. Then, without another word, he turned and stalked back to his car, tires spitting mud as he tore down the road. Silence fell heavy in the kitchen. Agent Walsh holstered her badge. I've been tracking Senator Blackwood for years. Money laundering, art fraud, bribery. Your sister is his weak link. She thinks she's untouchable. That arrogance will bring her down, but we need to catch her in the act. I forced my voice to steady. And if we don't? Walsh's gaze didn't waver. Then she'll destroy you the way she destroyed your mother. The words punched the air from my lungs. Before I could respond, another vehicle pulled up, a white van with medical insignia painted on its side. 2 orderlies climbed out, followed by a woman in a crisp suit jacket carrying a clipboard. Dr. Patricia Reeves, she announced at the door. Emergency psychiatric hold for Heather Hartwell. Petition filed by her sister, citing family history of mental illness and erratic behavior. My knees buckled. What? But then another voice cut through, firm and protective. Absolutely not. Dr. Amanda Price, my actual therapist, appeared at the porch steps, coat soaked from the rain. I am Ms. Hartwell's treating physician. She has no history of delusional thinking or dangerous behavior. These records you're holding are forgeries. Dr. Reeves blinked at the papers in her hand, confusion dawning. But the letterhead is fake, Dr. Price snapped. The license number doesn't even match mine. Whoever handed you these forged medical documents committed a federal crime. Agent Walsh stepped forward, eyes glittering. And filing false psychiatric holds is another federal crime. I'd suggest you all leave before I put you in cuffs. The orderlies hesitated, then turned. Dr. Reeves followed, pale and shaken, muttering apologies. When the van disappeared down the muddy lane, I slumped against the door, chest heaving. How many more times can we fight them off? I whispered. James's hand settled on my shoulder, steady. As many as it takes. But Heather, it's time we go on the offensive. I looked around at the strange army fate had gathered for me. A weary art professor, a devoted collector, a grizzled investigator, an FBI agent, and a lawyer drowning in guilt. The farmhouse walls groaned, but for the first time, I felt something else inside them too, resolve. Victoria thought fear would keep me small, but fear was fuel now. And tomorrow, it would be fire. By dawn, the farmhouse had become a war room. Coffee cups crowded the chipped table, papers and photographs spread like a battlefield map. Rain had given way to a mist that clung to the windows, turning the world outside pale and uncertain. James spread out authentication documents across the table, his hands trembling, not from age, but from urgency. I've called in every favor I have. 40 years of provenance research, chemical analysis, auction records. These paintings are authenticated beyond dispute. If Victoria tries to claim them, she'll fail. Thomas scrolled through financial records on his tablet, eyes narrowed. Your sister's been sloppy. The shell companies she's using to sell the missing pieces, they all trace back to accounts she opened before the fire was even ruled suspicious. That's premeditation. We've got her. Agent Walsh leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Be careful. She knows we're circling. Cornered people lash out, and your sister has resources. She won't just roll over. I rubbed my temples. So what do we do? Just wait for her to make the next move? No. Sarah's eyes flashed as she slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a blog post already gathering traction. Whispers of a major Eleanor Hartwell discovery in rural Illinois. I leaked it, she admitted. Not the location, not the details, just enough to get the art world buzzing, enough to rattle Victoria. My stomach nodded. You put a target on me. Exactly, Sarah said, her voice calm but fierce. A target that will make her act before she's ready. And when she does, we'll be waiting. Before I could respond, Thomas tapped the table sharply. There's more. He flipped the screen toward us. Medical records. Your mother visited 3 different doctors the month before she died, all outside your father's influence. Tests show chronic arsenic exposure, enough to mimic mental illness, confusion, weakness, just like Eleanor. The room went silent. I gripped the edge of the table. They poisoned her. James's voice cracked. To make the incompetency claim credible. If she looked unstable, no one would believe her accusations. My stomach heaved. Rage burned through my veins. They didn't just silence her. They framed her, made her seem crazy, the same way they did to Eleanor. Thomas's phone buzzed. He answered, face darkening as he listened. That was my contact at the FBI. They've been digging into Blackwood. The art laundering is just the surface. If we can prove Victoria's involvement, we can bring the whole network down. Agent Walsh nodded. But we need bait, something that forces her to reveal herself, something she can't ignore. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. Victoria's name lit the screen. Put it on speaker, Thomas whispered, hitting record. I answered, Hello? Her voice was taut, every word measured. What have you done, Heather? The press is sniffing. Rumors about Eleanor's paintings. Did you talk to someone? I kept my tone flat. Why would I? You told me they were all destroyed. A pause. Then, sharper. Listen to me. Sign the papers today, or you'll regret it. That's not a threat, it's a promise. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Actually, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice, I'm starting to get a pretty good idea. I hung up. My hand trembled, but my chest felt lighter. Thomas grinned grimly. Perfect. Documented threat. She's rattled. Sarah leaned forward. So what's the next step? Agent Walsh's eyes gleamed. We push her harder, force her to come in person. When she does, we'll have witnesses, press, law enforcement. She won't be able to hide. I stood, staring at the floorboards beneath the refrigerator. The scratches looked sharper than ever, like arrows pointing toward inevitability. Then my gaze lifted to my mother's studio. Her last painting stood unfinished, a canvas half-shrouded by a sheet. I pulled it free, and my breath caught. The painting showed Victoria standing over 2 graves, money spilling from her hands. But in the corner, faint but deliberate, was a date, tomorrow's date. My throat tightened. She knew, I whispered. Somehow, Mom knew this was coming. The farmhouse walls groaned as if answering. Tomorrow wasn't just a day, it was prophecy, and prophecy demanded a confrontation. Morning arrived heavy, thick with anticipation. Fog clung to the fields like a shroud, the dirt road leading to the farmhouse already lined with news vans. Word of the possible Hartwell discovery had spread faster than wildfire. Reporters huddled with cameras, lenses pointed at my broken inheritance as if it were a crime scene. Because in truth it was. Victoria arrived in a convoy of black SUVs. She stepped out immaculate as always, her black suit razor sharp, her smile stretched too thin to hide the cracks. Microphones shoved toward her as she raised her voice just enough for the press. I'm here for my sister, she declared, tilting her head like a benevolent savior. Heather is struggling, much like our grandmother before her. Mental illness runs in the family, and I'm deeply concerned she's being manipulated by opportunists. The crowd murmured. Flashbulbs popped. I stepped out onto the porch. My mother's unfinished painting clutched to my chest like armor. Funny, I said loudly enough for the cameras, that you're concerned now. Where was that concern when you poisoned Mom, when you sold Grandma's paintings through shell companies? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria froze, then laughed, brittle and sharp. You're delusional. She's delusional, she repeated to the cameras, voice rising. None of that is true. My sister has a history. Actually, a new voice cut in, crisp and authoritative. It is true. Agent Walsh stepped forward, FBI badge raised. A full team followed, agents fanning out, their presence impossible to ignore. Victoria Hartwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and suspicion of murder in the deaths of Harold and Margaret Hartwell. The cameras went wild. Reporters shouted questions. Victoria's mask shattered. "This is ridiculous," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, but we can," I said quietly, pulling out my phone. The recording from Whitmore's flash drive filled the air, my father's voice cold and calculating. "Margaret's becoming a problem. Accidents happen." And then Victoria's, sharper, harder. "Deal with her like we dealt with Eleanor." Reporters surged forward. Gasps, shouts, chaos. "That's fabricated," Victoria shrieked, but her words dissolved under the weight of truth. Dr. Price, my therapist, stepped into the frame, voice cutting clean. "And for the record, Heather has no history of delusional thinking. Those documents Victoria submitted were falsified." The crowd turned, hungry. Then Senator Blackwood himself arrived, his face purple with rage. "This is a political stunt," he thundered, pointing at me. "You won't destroy my family with baseless lies." But Agent Walsh's team was ready. "Senator Blackwood," she said, voice cool as steel, "we have a warrant for you as well. Fraud, bribery, conspiracy." When the senator tried to bluster, agents moved in. Handcuffs gleamed in the fog. Victoria fought as they restrained her, her manicured nails clawing at the air. Her voice carried above the chaos. "You stupid little—" She stopped herself, but her hatred burned. "You think you've won? You think you get to keep everything?" I held her gaze, steady. "I don't want everything. I just wanted the truth." The words silenced her more effectively than the cuffs ever could. Hours later, the farmhouse was crawling with federal agents cataloging every canvas, every ledger, every scrap of evidence my mother had hidden. Reporters filled the airwaves with live coverage, the Hartwell heist trending worldwide. In the kitchen, I sat at the table surrounded by the people who had become my unlikely army. James with his trembling hands, Sarah with her fierce eyes, Thomas scribbling notes with the intensity of a man who smelled victory, and Agent Walsh, calm, relentless, already thinking 5 steps ahead. "This isn't the end," Walsh warned. "Victoria will fight in court. She'll twist, manipulate, try to paint you as unstable. But you have the truth, and that's stronger than anything she's built." I nodded, though exhaustion pulled at my bones. "Then I'll keep fighting. For my mother. For Eleanor. For every woman they tried to silence." Later that night, when the crowds had gone and the farmhouse exhaled into silence, I returned to my mother's studio. Her unfinished painting stood waiting, Victoria looming over 2 graves. The date in the corner glowed faintly in the lamplight. Today's date. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because the prophecy had been fulfilled and the truth was no longer buried. I picked up a brush, dipped it in paint, and made the first stroke to finish what my mother had started. The farmhouse that had been meant to break me was becoming my sanctuary. My inheritance wasn't $300. It was legacy. It was justice. It was survival. And it was mine.